And later, I remember what you're asking me because I'll go a year later, I'm in a stalemate with the State Department. So I remember these numbers they were talking about, and the devil, the Rolling Stones represent the devil himself. And Jagger is a really smart guy and a good businessman. So I'm thinking, I need to bring Jagger to the State Department and show him that this is Mick Jagger, not number so-and-so who's the representative of the devil. So anyway, I called Jagger and he said, yeah, I'll fly down to Washington, meet you down there. He put on a suit and tie. And we walk into the lobby of the State Department. If you've ever been there, it's a big building and way too many people work there out of my head. But anyway, we go into the lobby and security comes out and people start coming off the elevators out of offices and swarmed us. And it was like a riot. And the security came and said, listen, we can't have this. I mean, and we don't have enough people here to take care of this. I said, they just want to meet Mick Jagger. There's not any danger here. And he said, this has totally disrupted our building. What am I going to do? So I said, why don't we just let us go on through, go into our meeting? Well, every time we got off the elevator, it was the same thing. Every girl that worked in that building had to meet Mick Jagger. And so now they don't know what to do. Here's the guy that they think is so bad and everything, but all their employees want to meet and have a picture made with him. So we had the meeting, and it turned out Mick became friends with one of the senior officers of the State Department and talked about history of foreign affairs. And he's really a smart guy. And the guy told me later, he said, Moore, you're Mick Jagger's a smart guy. So I think that meeting we had won the State Department officials over, and ultimately they made the decision. And the decision they made was, we'll grant them the right to tour, but you have to tour with them. You've got to protect the American youth. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not sure about this. So anyway, they wanted a written plan on how I would handle the Rolling Stones tour in the United States. I had an old Secret Service advance. I did several for Kennedy and more for Johnson, where we had to do a security advance on his trip, and you had to write that up and submit it to the White House and to the head of the Secret Service. So I just took one of those plans and just changed the name from President to the Rolling Stones, and I'd go to the city before they'd tour. We'd go to the city, meet with the mayor, the chief of police, and we'd plan security for their trip and submit it to the State Department. Fine, but you've got to tour with them. So for the next 3 tours, I did all the tours of the Rolling Stones. That's another story.
Yeah, there's some great stories. I mean, the very first chapter of Keith's autobiography about his life is about, the very first chapter is about getting arrested in Fordyce, Arkansas. But in that chapter too, he describes you to a T. Now I don't know that the Fordyce is a long story, so I don't know that we have the time to do that. Y'all can ask about that when we get to
let me remember that. But
yeah.
a couple of years ago, where's Glenna Sigsbee's here somewhere? Yeah. You told a friend or something of the judges in Arkansas. I got a call from the Judges Association, or it is all the judges in Arkansas, and they wanted to invite me to come to Hot Springs to their annual meeting and speak to them. And I was very flattered because I'm a dumb kid from Rector. I was never a very smart lawyer. I knew how to make deals, but I didn't see myself as, I was so honored by what I'm saying, that they wanted to, here's the judges, all the judges in Arkansas want to hear from me. So anyway, I did go down and speak to them, and the one thing they wanted to know about was Fordyce.
In the book though, Keith's book, it's like a perfect account of the whole thing.
Well, he exaggerated a few things, but
Yeah.
so Fordyce, I was touring with the Stones in 1975. I don't know how far we were into the tour. We got to Memphis, and it was a Friday night, I think, at the Liberty Bowl, and then we were off on Saturday. And so Friday, actually before the show, Friday, Keith came to me and said, "You always talk about Arkansas. We've got a date Sunday in Dallas. I think I'm going to rent a car and drive through Arkansas." And I said, "Oh, no, you're not, Keith." And this, by the way, the Arkansas legislature had introduced a bill banning rock and roll during this time. And as ridiculous as that might sound, I've got a copy of it in my office at home. But so the environment in Arkansas was not really good for Keith Richards. And so he said, "Okay, I won't do it." So Saturday, Judge Fairley over in West Memphis, a law school mate, called me and said, "Come over and we'll barbecue. You got a day off." Because we weren't flying out to Dallas till Sunday morning for the show there. So I'll go over to West Memphis, and Lindsay and I are out in his patio barbecuing, and I get a phone call that Keith's in jail in Fordyce, Arkansas. Now, of all places, Fordyce. And by the way, I knew I'd been on the Law Enforcement Training Academy Commission. Rockefeller appointed me there. I knew every law enforcement officer in Arkansas. I knew every sheriff. So I knew exactly what I was dealing with Fordyce. It was the most conservative area of the state. And so immediately I say to Judge Fairley, "I got to go get out the airport, charter a plane, get to Fordyce, and I need you to go with me because I'm likely to get arrested myself. I'm going to go down and get Keith out of jail." But anyway, I made a couple of quick phone calls to the state police and said, "Don't do anything till I get there." And they honored that. So we had a flight down there. Now, if you've read that story, it's pretty ridiculous because the judge had been playing, and I have to be careful here, there's some press here. The judge had been playing golf. Now, there's nothing wrong with most of you who play golf. You may have a cocktail or two. Saturday afternoon, you're not working, you're playing golf and having a few drinks. Well, the judge had had several. And when he got there, now the chief of police is mad because the state police had listened to me, and the chief he's got the Rolling Stones in his jail, and man, the press is calling from London, from all over the world. And by the way, by the time I got there at 5 o'clock. The TV station from Dallas and Channel 7 in Little Rock were set up already. Kids were coming from all over the South. It hit the radio, and the state police had put up roadblocks because thousands of kids would come. They're going to come and get Keith out of jail. And, so that's what I arrived and confronted with. So anyway, we got there. We're having a hearing, and I'm not going to go into all of it, but Keith, I described it in my book. But when Keith wrote his book, and he brought his co-author to Nashville to see me. He called me one night and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, nothing." He said, "Well, I'm going to come down and need to see you because my mind's a little foggy about some things." Really? So he flew down the next morning, and I'll throw in a few little tidbits here, but when we were unloading his baggage out the airport, he smoked 6 cigarettes in a matter of maybe 20 minutes. When he gets up in the morning, he smokes a cigarette, and he smokes a cigarette all day long, and he has a shot of whiskey for breakfast. So I've never known him to be sick. The only time he ever missed a date, he fell out of a coconut tree in Asia. But he's never had the flu. He's never been sick of any kind. And I'm not recommending his lifestyle for that purpose. But anyway, so...
well, I mean, I think that is such an interesting story. And then recently, the footage was released, and it's both my sister and I have that on Facebook.
He talked about all the drugs. There wasn't any drugs to speak of. One of the guys with him had some cocaine in his briefcase, and that was the charge. But the briefcase search was illegal. And I told the judge, and the prosecuting attorney was just out of law school. His Tom, he became a judge down there. Marlowe. What? Well, I can't remember his name, but anyway, he has went on to become a judge, but he was just out of law school, so he hadn't been tainted, influenced by anybody, and so he was going to follow the law. Well, the law was clear. They had no justification, no probable cause to open that briefcase. That didn't belong to Keith, but they opened it and found a little cocaine, so they filed charges against that guy. But I immediately told the judge it was an illegal search. And the judge was agreeing with me, and that was clearly what the law was. And the chief of police then decided the judge was drunk. And he couldn't make a decision. And the only way he could stop this was to arrest the judge for public drunk. So he attempts to do that, and it became a little scuffle there in the courtroom. In the meantime, Frank Wynn, who was the prosecuting attorney, I knew well. I called Frank and I said, "You need to get over here because we've got a serious problem." When he came and he ordered the chief of police to leave Tom Wynn alone, and he went back on the bench then and made a decision that it was a legal search, and we posted a bond. And I called my partner in Little Rock, Kathy Woods, and I said, "Get a King Air and get it down to the airport in Fordyce and have it waiting on the airport with a bottle of Jack Daniels." So when we get ready, we aboard that plane head to Dallas. So about 12:30 that night, now the state police still got a roadblock. There's a riot. And that actually, the film that was released from Channel 7.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that's been released, and it's
the
on your
state
website.
police put us in a car and had a police escort to get us from the courthouse to the airport. There was kids everywhere. Fordyce is about 5,000. I think there was 15,000 kids in Fordyce. So it was quite a riotous affair. And so when we boarded the plane, we did have Jack Daniels.
Yeah, and I know that, and I'll just kind of speak of this because, you went on to work with them for, like I said, 15 years, and you ended up being closer to Keith towards the end and helped him. And we don't have to really get into this, but because of that Fordyce incident and all that riot and what it showed the Rolling Stones could create and the love for them and the fans, that when Keith got arrested in Canada for drug possession, and a pretty hefty one for heroin, he could have been kept there for life. You presented to them that if they didn't get him out of jail, one, he would die because of his addiction, or that would create such a riot that, if he died, and you presented what was going to be kind of a riot type event, that they ended up giving you the access to get him out, get him safe, get him to rehab, and you really basically saved his life.
Well,
I mean, that's the short
of
of
it. In the beginning of that story, I knew they were going to Toronto to record at the El Macombo, a live album. And their financial advisor called me and said, "We're not going to need you on this trip because there's not going to be any big dates, events, or anything." So I said, "Fine, you don't want to pay me, then I won't come up." So I was in LA flying back to Little Rock. And the captain came to my seat and said, "I got to tell you, I got an emergency call for you. And when we land in Dallas, you've got to call home immediately. It's not a family emergency, it's a business matter. So when we land at Dallas, please call your home." I called my home and said, "You need to call Peter Rhodes, the Stones manager. Maybe Keith's been arrested in Toronto." So I called him and said, "You need to get to Toronto." I changed my flight from Little Rock to Toronto, flew to Toronto. And Keith had been arrested at the airport for something else, paraphernalia or something. But then they found the heroin later. He's at the hotel. So now they come to the Harbor Castle Hotel and arrest him on this heroin charge, which there was no bond. They called it, there's so much heroin, it was a trafficking charge. So they're not going to have any bond for him. Now he's in jail. He's a heroin addict. So he's going to, within a matter of hours, I've already talked to doctors about it, and if he don't get a shot of heroin, he will die within so many hours. So I'm desperate to get a bond set. So I get a Toronto lawyer, and we asked the judge for a hearing to set his bond. And the chief of police was opposing any bond releasing Keith. So I called Peter Rudds, the manager, and now this is from Fordyce. I saw how Keith's arrest stirred up the fans throughout the South. So I thought, So I said, get the press release out that Keith's in jail and his life's threatened because they won't allow a bond for him, and invite fans everywhere to come to Toronto. Well, man, they started coming. So in the hearing, I told the chief of police, I said, by now, we couldn't hardly even get, there's a picture of us trying to get into the courtroom, thousands of fans outside, and we're trying to get through that crowd to get into the court. And I told the police chief, if you don't set a bond for Keith Richards, they'll burn this town down. I'm telling you, I guarantee it. And now he's already seeing from intelligence what the kids are doing in Toronto. So they agreed to a bond. The judge at least heard my cry, and he granted a bond. But he said, Keith will have to stay at a Harbor Castle Hotel until this case comes up. So he was confined to the hotel, and that started a process. The police had bugged his room. I found the bug. They didn't know they were dealing with a former police officer. So I found the bug and made a fool out of the Toronto police over it. But anyway, I then had to, he was going to come up in court, and I asked the court for him in the hotel to arrange doctors to administer heroin to him, because otherwise he'd die, and I didn't want to do it illegally. So they actually authorized Keith to have heroin in the hotel to keep him from withdrawing and dying. So we're going through all that. I went to Washington. Jimmy Carter was president. I went to the White House and asked for approval to fly Keith into the United States. Now, he'd been arrested earlier. Now he's arrested in Toronto on a serious drug charge. He will never get back in the United States. So I went and asked that, let me bring him back in and treat him for his drug addiction. I've been on the phone to drug experts all over the world, and there was one in Hong Kong that I particularly liked. So I said, I want to fly the doctor from Hong Kong in to treat Keith. But I got to bring him in the United States. And the White House granted a visa, asked the State Department to grant a visa to bring him in. We took him to Philadelphia, brought Dr. Meg Patterson in from Hong Kong. In 14 days, Keith was
better.
Well, she actually got him out of addiction in 14 days. And it was a technique used on Eric Clapton and other rock stars. But from that day forward, Keith has not used any heroin to my knowledge, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. I'm not telling you he hasn't done a few things, maybe smoked a joint or he drinks too much, but he's not using drugs, and I'm really proud of him for what he's accomplished. And I might add something. Keith Richards is a nice guy. He's a friend of mine. I like him. I don't know if I'd have him over Thanksgiving, but at the same time, he's a lot more honest than most superstars I know. He's who he is. I always said, when I ask about Keith, he's blatantly honest. He's just Keith Richards. He's never anybody else. So you don't have to worry about him changing personalities. He's the same all the time. And his book was slightly exaggerated, and
it's a good read, though, if you read the first chapter.
and the first chapter is devoted to me, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, no idea that was going to be the case. Well, I mean, I know there's a lot of things that we want to talk about, but I will say this, that, after you worked with the Stones, the next start was like you were really kind of focusing on entertainment law. Because of working with the Stones, you got a lot of attention from that, from the music business, and so you ended up were suggested to work with Tanya Tucker in her early career, and then you went on to be Ruby McIntyre's entertainment lawyer, and then went on to become her manager. And we don't really have to get into that, but that's just more of a quick synopsis of you being in the music business after that for 20 years, working in many different areas of the music business with those careers. And that also led you to work with Bill Gaither in production, and then ultimately working with Billy Graham, which I know that was something that my grandmother, your mother, Faye, would have just been so proud of, with you working with Billy Graham. And do you want to talk about that? And the only other thing that I was saying that we missed, and I think is a really interesting story, is about Jimmy Hoffa and how you represented Jimmy Hoffa. So we can maybe talk about...
Well, let's jump back to Hoffa, because Hoffa came while I was representing the Stones. Wilbur Mills called me about Jimmy Hoffa. And said, again...
Oh, and talk about who, I mean, a lot of people don't, like, who's Jimmy Hoffa? Some people don't know who that is. So he's the head of the Teamsters.
Jimmy Hoffa was head of the Teamsters. Most people remember him. Well,
I mean, younger.
Well, so here's Hoffa's problem. He's in prison. He got sent to prison for tampering with a jury, and of all places, Nashville, Tennessee. He was convicted, got 8 years in prison. Now he's in prison. He decides to bribe Nixon to get him out. So what's the cost of that? $500,000 in $100 bills. He delivered it to John Mitchell. And now, what you have to do is file a request with a partisan parole board, and they recommend it to the president. So it got greased through there. It goes to Nixon for approval. But when Nixon signed it, it had a condition that didn't exist when it came out of the partisan parole board. The condition was that Hoffa could never participate in union activities again. Now, that wasn't part of the deal. So he goes to Mills and says, I got to have help here. And Mills sent him to me. And so he said, I just want you to find out the truth, what happened here. So he hires me to do that. I do an investigation, and I find out this is, I don't know that Washington's I don't think it's much different today, and this kind of stuff has always existed up there, but here's what happened. So Hoffa's about to get clemency to get out of prison and take over the Teamsters again. Fitzsimmons, who's president of Teamsters, goes over and bribes Charles Colson, the president's counsel, to include this condition on the clemency, and he paid him $250,000 to do that. So when I find all this out, I went to Mills and I said, oh my gosh, here's the deal. And he said, he picked up the phone and he dialed Nixon. He said, Bill Carter's got some information you need to hear. I'm telling you, you need to hear this. I'm going to send him right over to see you. I went out and got in a cab, went to the White House. I walked into Nixon's office. Now, the mood at that time, I mean, Watergate's going on. So, Nixon listened to me. Basically, I was threatening him to saying, I'm going to reveal all this to the press. Your counsel has been bribed to insert this condition, and I'm going to expose all this. And it didn't bother him that much. It caused me. He called General Haig, his chief of staff, and said, I want you to take care of this. And I said, well, Mr. President, I'm going to file a petition back before the Pardon and Parole Board for a full pardon. to clear all this up. And if you do that, then I won't reveal any of this. So he said, told General Haig to take care of it. I go back and I tell Hoffa and told Mr. Mills, look, I don't think Nixon really heard me because he's about to be impeached. He kind of listened, but he didn't listen. And I don't think he's that interested in my problem. So anyway, the result was that, and I told Hoffa, he said, well, let's go to court and we'll litigate it in the meantime. And Nixon resigned immediately thereafter. And then you all know that my client disappeared. And so I felt the whole thing bothered me. And I got to tell you, the FBI agent called me a year or so ago and said he's retired. And he said, I just want to talk to you. I had lunch with you, talk to you about Jimmy Hoffa, because I was on the Hoffa squad, Robert Kennedy's squad that watched Hoffa 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And he said, we bugged him. We knew everything was going on. And when he met you at the Barclay Hotel in New York, we bugged his suite. But you didn't go to his suite. You took him over in the corner of the lobby of the hotel and talked to him, and we couldn't hear it. We couldn't listen to it. We thought you were going up to the suite, and we had it bugged, and you tricked us. And I said, well, I'm a former federal lady. You think I don't know what's going on around here? I'm going to let you listen into our conversations. So anyway, he said, I just want to know what Hoffa was like. I watched him for years. I never met him. So we talked about Jimmy Hoffa as a person. And again, I judge people by how they deal with me, and he did what I asked him to do, and he was gracious with me. You'll be interested in this. When I first met him at the lobby of that hotel, he stuck out his hand and he said, Bill, do you know how to skin a catfish? And I said, yes. You nail it to a post, cut around its head, and pull the skin off. And he said, all right, let's talk. Now, what was that about? I honestly think he felt like he could trust a country boy. Now, I don't know why he asked me that. I never had an opportunity to ask him. But his wife was a gracious lady. His daughter is a judge in St. Louis. And James, his son, is now head of the teachers and a lawyer. And I knew him. I didn't know the daughter who's a judge. But I think he was an interesting guy, to say the least.
I felt like that was more of an interesting story. I mean, of course, the other music business, but I don't think we don't really have a time right now to get into a lot of that, but with Reba and Tanya and many other things. But maybe y'all can ask those questions.
Well, I've had a lot of interesting clients, and any of them that you want to know about, just ask me. So,
but I definitely want to kind of, in conclusion, because I feel like it kind of comes full circle, because from the very beginning, and you talk about people in your life, and really from the sheriff that gave you the advice and helped you get back into high school, to Wilbur Mills, who keeps popping up along the way. You basically, your life was not planned, it just happened. And you always say that every opportunity just came to you. And one thing, as you've heard today, is like, it's kind of just been like this snowball effect, and it's all about you having good judgment of character, or having great relationships, and those relationships starting from your family all the way through your careers. And I think that's just been an interesting theme. And I guess some of the things that, like the little questions that I want to ask is like, do you have anything that you think that would be the one thing that helped you achieve your success? Is it all of those things? And
well,
confidence, no fear, like we talked about this, luck, or is it just?
Well, I think I've said this many times in speeches, is my life's about divine guidance. I think I've had angels who've looked after my life. There's no explanation for things that have happened in my life. I question it myself. Somebody always came forward and helped me. And, I just think there had to be, there's no other explanation than then if you want to say God, or I always say God's too busy to be dealing with my life, but there are angels.